Okay, so we're gonna get through this video pretty quickly because I've got to run to work. And plus I didn't read a lot. So we are talking about the books that I read in February. I only got through 5 books, which is good. I mean, actually it's better than I thought I did. I started a couple of other ones that I didn't finish, but you know what? Let's just get down to it. The first book that I actually finished up in February, I was in a pretty solid dark academia mood. So I actually listened to The Whispering Dark by Kelly Andrew on audio, and I ended up giving this book 3 stars. It wasn't exactly what I was looking for. First of all, so this is like a young adult story, but the characters in this were college aged, which that always throws me off. I just feel like new adult should really be a thing. I really did enjoy, I'm reading my notes from Goodreads, I enjoyed the magic system and the imagery that they used. I also thought it was really interesting to be in Lane's perspective because Lane is hearing impaired. I believe that Lane's supposed to be mostly deaf, but a lot of it is still like verbal, like from the hearing aids, she can pick up what's going around, but sometimes if they're turned off, completely silent. And I did really enjoy that aspect of it. I thought it was a really interesting perspective. I haven't read from a deaf main character before, so I did enjoy that aspect of the book. Now, where this book lost me was I felt as though everything about it was predictable. The way that the story goes felt very predictable, and the ending was predictable. I accidentally picked out who the big bad person was in this. Like, it's supposed to be a mystery, I think, the entire time of who the antagonist is, but I honestly guessed it in like the first chapter. Okay, maybe not the first chapter, but like the second chapter, and I the entire time was thinking, no, there's no way that it would have been that obvious. It must be someone else. It wasn't. It was that person. So, I mean, that aspect of it was kind of like underwhelming. A lot of the climax ended up feeling underwhelming because of that, and I just kind of felt underwhelmed. I also didn't love the chemistry between Lane and I already forgot his name. I didn't enjoy the chemistry. I thought that it was kind of like mid, and I didn't love the explanations for a lot of the things. It felt like it was trying to be secretive for no good reason. But it wasn't bad. I mean, I gave it 3 stars. It was average. Now for a book I did not feel anything average for. Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. I loved this. It was a 5-star. It was almost not a 5-star though, because the very last bit of this, the last like 8 pages, could we have done without that? Because it felt like this very realistic story, this very like, I mean, granted, there's occult magic in it, there's dark magic. We're still at Yale, it's still just, it has a lot of that occult feel to it, and there's definitely some more fantastical elements to this than the last one, but the last few pages of this just felt like the realism that we did feel throughout it was just for nothing, because it felt straight out of a fantasy book. Like, not even a fantasy book that I might respect, I guess. That's harsh, but I just think that it was a very YA sequence, and this book is so adult in every other aspect, and that last bit was so YA. But then I read the author's note, and it turns out she had been listening to Ludovico Einaudi throughout her writing process, and I very randomly was actually listening to Ludovico Einaudi throughout my almost entire reading process. And not because I knew that it was supposed to go together, I just happened to be like in a very Ludovico Einaudi mood, and I literally wrote it throughout the book, so I was like, oh my gosh, we're on the same page. So because of that, it ended up being a 5-star, but otherwise it probably would have been a 4.5. Everything else about this though was so gratifying. I think that like the slow burn aspects of it were really done well. I do like the more fantastical elements that were throughout the story itself, not like in the very end, obviously. I really enjoy this world. I love having Alex as a main character. I really am interested to see where it goes next. Although I'm a little bit tentative. If there is a next book, I don't know, I haven't looked into it, but if there is a next one and it's following very closely to those last 8 pages, I don't know. Oh, did I even say what these are about? I didn't. Whispering Dark was basically about Lane, who always feels like she's seen as a very fragile girl because of her accident that left her deaf, and she gets accepted into this very like prestigious college within a school, and her parents are like, no, maybe you shouldn't go, and she's like, no, I'm a big kid, I can do this, but like there's also like mysteries and deaths happening on this campus that she is ultimately gonna have to team up with Colton, who has been told to stay away from her at all costs, but she's gonna team up with him anyways to try and figure out what the heck's going on. Now, Hellbent is the sequel to Ninth House, and in it, Galaxy has been recruited to the Ninth House, which is the house that oversees the other 8 secret societies at Yale University, and in this story, those secret societies all practice their own magic, which is why they need the 9th house to kind of regulate everything and make sure that no one dies or is being abused or anything like that. And Alex specifically is pretty special in this aspect because she can see ghosts, and normally people can't just see ghosts. You have to like take a special potion that like makes you feel all types of ways, but she can just see them naturally. And ultimately there's a lot of murder mysteries going on, and it's just a very dark story. I will say this is very dark, and it delves into very dark things, so look up trigger warnings if you can be sensitive to any of those subjects. Now next, I actually read Love and Other Disasters by Anita Kelly. So this is about Dahlia, who kind of used cooking to find herself again when she was in a very bad marriage, bad place, and now she's been accepted into this chef's challenge, and she's really excited about it, but she's also really nervous. She doesn't really feel like maybe she has the expertise to be there, but she's just excited about it, secretly hoping she'll win, obviously. And then she meets London, who also is on the show, and London is a non-binary main character, which I have never actually read from before, so that aspect of this was also really cool for me. But London is exceptional, like exceptional in so many ways, but exceptional specifically in cooking, and Dahlia and London might have a little bit of a dalliance. But let me see what I actually gave this. Oh my gosh, not it being time for me to leave to go to work. So I ended up giving it a 3.75 stars. I loved the descriptions of the cooking and the food. I really thought that Dahlia and London had a lot of chemistry, like a lot of good chemistry. I will say that like the plot kind of went in a very predictable manner. This felt like an above average book, but barely above average in my opinion, but not in a bad way, like in a way that I would still recommend to people, especially if like they like maybe like friends to romance, slow burn romances, things like that. This does still definitely get steamy. It's not like a PG version at all. It doesn't fade to black, if that tells you anything, but that aspect was actually surprising to me because I don't know why, but I thought that this was gonna have like fade to black scenes, and it wasn't. So if you're into that kind of thing, you love cooking, you love spice, this is for you. Now the next book that I read, I actually don't have a physical copy of. I have the original, which was Take a Hint, Dani Brown by Talia Hibbert. I loved this. I loved this so much. I gave it 5 stars. It's definitely my new like favorite romance book. I loved it. Dani is the sister that we follow in this one, and Dani is a very like hyper independent person. She knows herself. She knows that she wants to keep just like working on her career and becoming a professor, and she is incredible at what she does. She's very smart. She is ready to continue learning and teaching and all of that. And she doesn't really need a man. She doesn't want a man. She's not like into a relationship. She's not a relationship girl, because every single time that she's kind of tried to date, everyone's been offended at the fact that she puts her career first and she's not going to stop her flow just for someone else's sake. And she's okay with the fact that people just don't really see her as relationship material. She doesn't want to be seen as relationship material. And in comes, of course, Zaf, Zaf's been through it. He's kind of going through a lot of grief still over an accident that happened prior to the story, and he actually dropped his entire professional career because of things that happened after that accident. And he is just like this really big buff dude that is kind of just like playing it easy for right now. They work in the same building, but he's just like a security guard, and they just see each other as like work companions until a picture goes viral of him taking her out of the building, like carrying her out and saving her from this drill that actually ended up happening, and they just go viral. And it's really good for his nonprofit organization that he's trying to do, and she doesn't really mind helping him out in this because he's like a very nice guy, but they have to do a fake dating situation, and yeah, it kind of grows from there. So if you like cold, mean girls that maybe are a little bit too much of a workaholic and hyper independent, and you love like a sweet golden retriever boy that's just like precious and so loving and caring, and you love it to be a slow burn, and you love it to be fake dating, and you love spice because this is spicy, you're gonna love it. I cannot recommend it enough. Now for the last book, I'm not going to talk a lot about this. If you watch my last vlog, I go in on this book, and that's Vladimir by Julia May Jones. I gave it 2 stars. Honestly, I thought about DNFing it at the 45% mark. 45%, I was like, there's no way that this is gonna go in any good way. It was terrible. I didn't like where it was, but I kept pushing through because I was like, you know what? If I'm gonna hate this, I want to hate this thoroughly, and I'm glad I finished it because it ended up being a 2 star, not a 1 star. But it's mostly about a professor who is married to a professor in a college in a small English department, and her husband is getting accused of, like, he's getting sued for student-teacher relationships that he had 20 years prior. 20 years prior, when I guess it wasn't illegal to do so, and they had an open relationship. They had an agreement. She just didn't want to know about it, and she has a very different viewpoint on this. She's like, well, when I was young, I was into my professors. I liked power. This is probably how it was. And she kind of refuses to see the other side of it, the potential power dynamics of it, which is something that really frustrated me throughout. She just annoys me. She's very much caught up in her appearance and how everything looks and how she's aging, and she wants youth, and she ultimately gets absolutely obsessed with this new professor that joins the college, and he's 20 or so years younger than her, and he is like a shining star, and she becomes obsessed with him, and he is married, and he's married to this beautiful woman who also starts at the college. And the weirdest thing is, our main character loves his wife, loves her, also thinks that his little daughter is so cute, and she still kind of wants him and is willing to potentially do some pretty shady things to get together with him. And I didn't like that. I really didn't like that. It just felt really uncomfortable. I hated the topics that were being had. I felt like our main character was very hypocritical at times, and I felt like for such an open person, like willing to see so many sides of the story, willing to be so feminist and everything, she was very anti the things that she stood for at the exact same time. And I get it. Imperfect people are imperfect, but you know, I said this in my vlog, but when I'm reading a book, I don't want to be trapped in the reality I'm already trapped in. I want escapism, and I think literary fiction tends to pull me back. So maybe literary fiction just isn't for me, or maybe I haven't read the right one. I don't know, but I gave this 2 stars. And that's it. I've got to run and go to work now, so I hope this was enough, and thanks for watching. I will see you next month, at least, for another wrap up, but probably before then. Okay, bye.
What